So one of my favourite pastimes is sending links for classic cars abroad to colleagues and various mates with the idea of a far-flung European road trip to bring it back. It might be a car that we couldn't get here, such as a Renault Twingo, for example. It might be a car that was former street furniture but is virtually extinct. I mean, I've lost count of the amount of times I've sized up Yugos in Slovenia, for example. Or it might be a car that's just more affordable overseas. Now, I've bought in a few cars on my own over the years, but nothing post-Brexit. And of these links that I've been sending to my friends and colleagues, well, ultimately nothing has ever happened. Until now. The big day arrived at the end of February. I was joined by my mate Matt Pink and Steph Holloway of the iDriver Classic YouTube channel, and we began our adventure by driving to Ashford in Matt's VW Touareg and stashing a trailer at his mate Pete's house. We didn't know how the French insurance would stand up in the UK, and we didn't fancy risking it, so this seemed like the safest option. Pete then kindly drove us all to Gatwick, braced for an early 6 a.m. flight.
Here we are on our 17.99 flight, just about to touch down in Nice, about to do probably the stupidest thing with a car that we've ever done. Buy a car, 47 years old, sight unseen, and drive it back to the UK. Wish us luck.
Despite the weather, we decided to travel into Nice for a look around and peruse some of the local street markets. It was on one of these where I found a scale model of a Mark I Fiesta, which was surely some kind of good omen, but enough with the procrastination. We needed to go and get the real thing. Now, I should point out we weren't completely shooting in the dark. I'd spotted the car for sale on a French classified site, Le Bon Coin, and I'd got my friend Alex to send messages to the seller. The car was located in Pégamas, a small town northwest of Cannes, and heading up into the Alps. We originally planned to go to his house, but that was changed to a car park in the centre of town, which led to me standing there under an umbrella in the rain, waiting for the seller to turn up. Anyway, I needn't have worried. Rayen, the vendor's son, turned up first in his BMW, and we hopped into a cafe while we were waiting for his dad, Benica, to turn up with the Fiesta. The Fiesta wasn't quite the Minter I'd hoped for, looking a tad careworn, but it drove well enough on the test drive, and having heard we were driving to England, Ben had kindly put 2 new front tyres on it too. He also bought us all coffees before we completed the paperwork and shook hands. After receiving the keys, Ben and Rayen were kind enough to drive us to Nor Auto, which is basically a kind of Halfords equivalent, where we could stock up on coolant, a few tools and oil for the trip. Remember, we had taken no luggage beyond our clothes, so we could get those $17.99 flights. Ben got another hero's welcome, and I can honestly say he was an absolute pleasure to deal with. We had no other way of getting home, apart from this Fiesta, so we had to pray it all worked out. And luckily, so far, it had.
So I'm sat in the back of Jeff's lovely Mark I Fiesta, and it's really comfortable. It's a little bit unnerving being on the motorway without a seatbelt, but that's to be expected in one of these older cars. But the ride quality seemed really good, and visibility is good, and it's just a really nice place to be in here.
And we're now getting done by an Arctic. I'm not nervous. La 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 la. When it comes to the buying experience for this, I mean, we're understandably nervous about a car we've never seen, a seller we've never actually spoke to, because I don't speak French and he doesn't speak much English, which is obviously my fault, not his. But honestly, we couldn't have met a nicer guy, and his son was great as well. Both of them together, you know, they've really helped us out, bought us a coffee even, were great with the paperwork, put 2 new tyres on the front, and then took us to their equivalent of Halfords basically for oil and some coolant, just to put as spares in the back. Fantastic. I honestly can't fault the experience. They've just been top guys.
The original plan had basically been to head straight home, but while we were in the south of France, we couldn't resist a little jaunt in the wrong direction, towards Monaco. We found a good viewing point over the Principality, made acquaintance with a classic Ferrari and a Bentley, then headed into the centre to drive some of the famous Formula 1 route. We did manage to find the iconic Lowe's hairpin, but then I managed to take a wrong turn and got lost. Thankfully, eventually we turned up in the P-scene and pit lane area and marvelled at how out of place our ratty Fiesta looked among the super yachts. We parked it up alongside the Porsches in an underground car park and did a spot of shopping. Later that afternoon, we retraced our steps by heading out of Monaco, back west along the A8 and up the A7 to an Ibis hotel in Montelimar. We'd covered 430 kilometres since collecting the car, and several more in an Uber. Thankfully, it hadn't rained much, and the car had performed admirably.
And then you finish. Yeah, It's the morning of day 2. Here we are in the south of France and enjoying the Fiesta. Yesterday was great fun, but how is it this morning, Jeff?
Well, we had a really good day yesterday, didn't we? We were very lucky, flying by the seat of our pants all day, and somehow it all worked out. So, fingers crossed that we're going to have the same sort of luck today, and we thought we'd probably better start by checking the fluids.
Yep, so let's have a quick look under the bonnet.
Let's whip the bonnet open. Yeah, here we go. Dip it in. It's on the max.
That's exactly where it was when we left.
Rightio.
Okay.
Happy days.
That's good
We
news.
could account for leaning forward by about 1 degree, but
it's barely on the level.
Barely a problem.
Yeah.
There's the expansion tank
and
there.
The coolants.
And you can
Fine.
see it's where it was. so what do we do now?
Very uneventful. The jeopardy has gone away.
What do we do? Yeah.
Should we just do another 500 kilometres today and see what happens?
Yeah. Might be a bit flooded now. Oh, yeah, it's fine, isn't it? It's sweet as that, really, isn't it? Is there any junk coming out the back?
It's really clean out the back, nothing at all.
The one thing we haven't done is used an additive for unleaded fuel, so that's something we really need to get hold of today and start using, because I'm pretty sure that it'll have never been converted to unleaded, so let's see how we get on.
Day 2 was all about heading north, although we tried to stay off the motorway as much as we could, and we ended up spending quite a lot of time in supermarkets buying lead replacement additive, bargain basement floor mats, and lots of crisps. After stopping in Vienne for lunch, we headed towards Saint Etienne and up over Massif Central. The little 1.1 Valencia motor was having to work hard, but more concerning was our lack of winter tyres. We thought our route had avoided the areas in which they were mandatory, but we kind of missed this one, so we winged it with our fingers crossed. Finally, we arrived in Bourges about 7:30 to have a meal with Alex and thank him for all of his help. We had planned to stay in Bourges and spend some more time with Alex, but wanting a few more kilometres on the board, we pressed on to Orléans, southwest of Paris. By the time we'd rolled into another budget hotel car park, we'd covered 610 kilometres for the day. Day 3 would be our last one in France. It started early and it started cold. We were determined to avoid Paris rush hour traffic, so we set off on a mazy route up the coast towards Calais.
So day 3 now well underway. We've had a bit of sunshine today, so that's a bit of a contrast from the rain of yesterday, but it was bitterly cold when we started off this morning, 0 degrees. So I was scraping off ice with my hotel room key, because we didn't really think picking up a car from the south of France that, you're going to need to be de-icing it, but that's where we were. Car was a little bit more reluctant to start this morning, but it went eventually, and the heater works quite well, and we were soon quite nice, toasty and warm. Brimmed the tank again, and here we are. So we're probably about a third into the journey, just heading for Rouen now, and everything's still running well. Checked the oil this morning, hasn't used any, coolant's still the same. Yeah, pretty happy. It's going as well as it could be.
Our final destination in France was the Channel Tunnel terminal, but not before a little bit more shopping at a hypermarket in Boulogne and some more crisps. We got asked a few awkward questions by Border Force, but ultimately we were happily waved on the train with another 445 kilometres covered.
So we're almost at the end of our adventure after first clapping eyes on this wonderful Fiesta 3 days ago. We're finally on the Channel Tunnel. It's been wonderful. The car's got here no problem. We didn't have any issues getting through onto here. Filled the car with shopping that we wanted, and it's been a really fun trip. Unfortunately, this is where it ends because we're meeting a trailer on the other side, so the car will then be transported back to Somerset, back to my house, where I'll complete the Nova declaration, sort all the paperwork out and attempt to get it UK registered. Ready for more adventures in Britain. Maybe we shouldn't film this bit. I can't make it work.